Good morning. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. I am live. I am a little early, like I was last time, still with the snow here and a couple other things going on. I've had to modify my schedule a little bit and actually tape it a little early. Sorry about that. Hopefully, Wednesday, I'll be able to do it at 10 o'clock, like I said that I was going to do. That's the goal and all those things. So I hope that everybody had a great weekend. I want to start with, as you know, if I were running for governor, what I would say to folks. And today I want to talk about inflation and the cost of living in Illinois. Now, all of us are in Illinois, so we know that things are expensive, and the word is affordability. Affordability. What can we afford in the state? So there is some information out there about our inflation rate, things like that. So when I checked, they focus on the Chicago, Naperville, Eglin area, and it's 2.2%. The national average is 2.7. I think that someone would have to investigate that a little bit more and figure out if they're looking at all of Illinois or just the Chicago, Naperville area. But anyway, that's what we have to deal with. And I think that when you go to the grocery store, you feel the effect because we all buy meat, we buy vegetables, uh, we buy toilet paper, and all of those things. And what's such surprising is you would think that we didn't have many fish in the ocean because if you buy salmon right now, it is just really expensive. So I want you to look at your receipts and you will see that there are a lot of taxes at the grocery store. Now, here in O'Fallon, there is a local sales tax to help pay for some things in the area. But for the state, the governor actually um, took that away at the last part of last year. Now, if he gets reelected, it could be back, but for now, there is not one. Now, here's the one that will not even surprise you. Energy prices surged 6.5% in the last month. As I've told you a couple of times, power bills are surging because the electric company went to the legislature, the state legislature, and lobbied and said that they had some infrastructure projects that they wanted to do, and that's why they wanted to raise the rates. Now, all of us remember last summer, especially from July, August, the rates were absolutely high. And I believe this year they might even be more, but we're not there yet. Now, if I were running for governor, as I told you, as a Republican governor, you uh, have in your toolbox the power to veto in four different ways that could be effective if you have a super majority, and in this case, the Democrats. So you could take out, or you could have taken out if they were trying to raise the energy rates. And keep in mind, in Illinois, and if we keep Governor Pritzker in there another 4 years, he's going to go for solar and all of those types of things because their agenda is environmental and all that stuff. And environmental isn't bad. We just have to phase it in differently. So if we have other sources to get energy, we need to use that and maybe spend some time figuring out how to make those safer. And if I were a candidate, I would be talking about that to people, encountering that the planet is going to end in the next 100 years if we're not exclusively using solar and not using any natural resources like gas. Some of us have gas stoves, and you better be careful because the policy could change and they could say through the legislature that they want to phase them out. That's why you have to have a balance of power so that the cost for people, can you imagine if you were only using an electric stove and you couldn't use the gas stove? So that's something to think about as a voter in this state, because, and this is my opinion, you phase in new stuff over time, and time would be the next 40 and 50 years. Let it take hold when the other sources get cheaper. So since January 2021, the average Illinois household has spent an estimated $35,255 more on the same basket of goods and services due to cumulative inflation. So that sounds about right, because I know how it felt prior to 2018, and the belts are getting tighter. So, cost of living breakdown. So we're looking at, we're on par with the national average. We can do better than that by making different choices. So housing, the average rent in Illinois is $1,669 monthly. That's how much it is. Now, California, Washington, D.C., I could see that, but I can't see, and I'm in O'Fallon. So if I'm talking to voters, if I'm running for governor, I would want to get these costs down. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. And one of the biggest ways that you can do it is you make the property taxes less for the people owning the apartments, and then somehow doing that, maybe you can get the cost down. And also, you need to have, you need to let people make it so that people can build more apartment buildings, because the more you have, the more you people have choices so that they can go with a cheaper deal. So make the apartments compete against each other. And it's a free market. So in this case, we cannot put any kind of rent caps and all of these other things that would not never make it through the court. So if you make the apartment building owners cost less and you put more housing out there that you can rent, that's how you would get the price down. And as I said earlier, energy prices surge. And as a result, like I was saying, utility prices are 5% higher than the national average. This is in Illinois that we're talking about. And that goes back to the legislature and to the governor. And we are feeling that. And right now it's really cold. So some of us are getting $400 bills. And that is expensive. And in O'Fallon, we have a lot of military retirees and people who work on Scott Air Force Base that make a fair living. And even with that, that's a lot of cost to absorb. And I told you that households are spending, 35,000 plus on goods and services based on the inflation. So if you tie that together, affordability, I would say that there's no affordability. And anyone who wants to be governor and even in the legislature needs to be addressing that so that folks can make it in this economy. So here's something that you think is interesting. And I got this out of the database. This is information that the state of Illinois is releasing to the public. So to live comfortably, covering necessities, savings, and leisure, a family of four in Illinois typically needs an annual income of approximately $100,000. Now, remember, I said that rent average is $1,669. And then we look at utility costs. So $100,000, that's not going to go far. And I'm assuming that it's a couple sharing the expensive. So they're both making $50,000 roughly a piece. So you have to judge if you think that that's enough money to make it in this economy. But a governor and the legislature can change it and look for opportunities for utilities, transportation, 5% more for transportation than the national average. And that's the gas prices. So if you compare Illinois against Missouri, because we go to Missouri sometimes to fill up the car, and it's just night and day difference, not on just regular gas, but premium and all of those things, because some of us have different grades of gasoline. So that is very important if you're running for governor in the states, and voters need to look for a candidate who's talking about bringing down all of these costs. Now, if you live in Chicago, according to the data, your inflation is at 4.3%. And I can't but believe that people in the Chicago, Cook County area want to pay more because of inflation. It's time for a change and at least have people talking about it. And as I've said previously, what the governor and what the legislature are talking about, they're not talking about affordability issues in depth and what they're going to do about it. So we need to think about that. Okay. Also, healthcare affordability and access in Illinois. All right. So, and this public data again, there's a significant concern over rising costs. So I'm going to partially talk about this and then finish up this discussion on Wednesday. Um, okay, so if you didn't know, residents' primary access coverage through three channels: Get Covered Illinois and Illinois Medicaid. But here's something that I want to bring to your attention. So if you're doing the Illinois Medicaid, so it's low cost or free coverage for adults 19 to 64 with household incomes below 138% of the federal poverty level. So that's $1,366 a month. Okay. So if I'm running for governor, I keep talking about community and how everyone should have to pay taxes, and in the same breath, they should be able to access health care even if they're making more money. Because with all of these other costs, you're not going to be able to afford health care if you can't afford power, you can't afford gas. And whoever's running for governor of the state needs to be talking about how regular folks who've worked their whole lives can get some into this community of access. So I'm using community a lot. We are all better off if we are sharing expenses and also if everybody can access it. So if you make over a certain amount of money, maybe 150,000, okay, most jobs at that level have insurance. So I'm not really talking to you. I'm talking to the people, and let's just give an example, the service industry, who I've talked to some of them, and we can't even get them non-payment for tips. Okay, the legislature just started talking about it, and it probably won't go anywhere. And they are the ones who cannot get on the Illinois Medicaid, for example. Now, these are just examples. I'm not trying to single any group out here. So, if younger people are having kids, they have to come out of their pockets significantly to make this work. And we need to have them be the target. Now, as you are aware of, Illinois has a minimum wage of $15 an hour. Now, if you do the math on that, depending on the number of hours that you get in a week, and then every 2 weeks, how much you're getting paid, you, the person working in the service industry, are paying out more money. And you we need a governor who's talking about that too, how to change that process with this Illinois Medicaid, because the governor, along with the legislature, they could change this so that based on your income, you would get some. The worst thing that happened that no one ever talks about is the federal government came up with this federal poverty level, and I talk about it in my other podcasts. Who made this up? People in Congress that were making $175,000 a year and have free health care. They are not real regular people, because in just with this program alone, voters who are below 138%, that wouldn't be a lot of people, and everybody else is being left out. That's why I said that I wanted to talk more about this later Wednesday, and then I'll get some more details. We have to get into a mindset of services being provided to everyone, even if you're working up to a certain level. And these numbers for healthcare, for affordability, just don't help regular folks. And you're not regular, you are extraordinary if you're working and you've been working and you're being taxed into oblivion. Okay, so I'll talk more about the health insurance on Wednesday. Now I want to go to what I was talking about with my weekly podcast on U.S. federal government policy. I talked about AI. That podcast is a little long because I'm going to have to do two. Artificial intelligence really covers a lot, and its impact across the country is startling how much and how fast it's moved in the last 4 years. I did a podcast about it um, probably about 2 years ago. And what I really touch on in the podcast for this one is how 2 and 3 years ago there were algorithms built to find out social bias in the workplace. And I present that to you, and then I say, hey, you have to decide if this was needed in the workplace. And then I talk about some lawsuits. And in the part two of my podcast, I'm going to go to some of these court cases and see what the courts are saying. And remember something, you have to have good attorneys. And if you just read the subject line and you don't look at the facts that were presented in the actual court case, it could be misleading because they could have won, but not for the reason that you thought. And now I said in the podcast, with the different administration now, they are really looking at making AI neutral. It's just looking for facts and details. It's not making any assumptions. So the developers, and we've got some smart people out there, if they can make an algorithm that digs so deep and it makes a lot of assumptions. And in the part two, I'm going to talk about what you're really going to be excited about is how the jobs are being affected and why 2 years ago when I did it, the AI podcast, there's a lot of useful things that artificial intelligence can do. And you can go back and listen to that early on podcast. For example, you could have it administrating sewer systems. If we could transition and get the robots incorporated, and they're working on this, the biggest issue is power. Those are, so I'm talking about menial labor things, not not jobs that pay well. So, and I'll talk more about that in that part too. So listen to my podcast. It's very interesting. I went kind of long, like I told you, but it's some very important information with facts and data that's just not being talked about. And it is a powerful tool. And the other big thing is that there is an difference of opinion about DEI being used in AI and how the federal government now is trying, well, they're taking some of the states to court over some of these AI DEI policies. And based on the information that I gave you in the other podcast, as a voter, you need to decide that. And is it fair for the AI to be used in this capacity? And that's what we have the courts for. And I always talk about that no matter who's in power, the courts are the most effective entity because they are following the law, even though some people would say, no, no, they're very biased. Well, that's an opinion. So listen to that podcast. This is Just Listen, hosted by George, and I am live. And try to have a good day. Always try to keep an open mind, and we'll see you Wednesday.